Well, I don't think of myself as an idealist, actually. I don't think of myself as a dualist, and certainly don't think of myself as a physicalist. In terms of philosophy of nature, I think in terms of a holistic philosophy of nature, in which nature is organized in a series of levels at which the whole is more than sum of the parts. So subatomic particles within atoms, where the wholeness of the atom is more than the particles, within molecules, where the wholeness of the molecule is more than the constituent atoms, crystals, cells, organisms, societies of organisms like flocks of starlings or schools of fish, ecosystems, planets, entire planets like Gaia, our own planet, solar systems, galaxies, and ultimately the whole cosmos. At each level, the wholeness includes lower level wholes, like a molecule includes atoms which are autonomous, have autonomous wholeness. So what I'm suggesting is that in each of these levels, they're organized by morphic fields, which are fields which give them shape, form, structure, and that these fields have the shape, form, and structure they do because of a memory of previous similar systems given by morphic resonance across time and space. Now, this hypothesis of nature doesn't necessarily say very much about the underlying basis of this, the wholeness of all these things. I suggest that morphic resonance is normally the basis of habits, that most things in nature are habitual. Most of our own behavior is habitual, which involves a kind of memory, but not necessarily a conscious memory. In fact, when things become habits, they usually stop being conscious. They just happen almost automatically. If I get onto a bicycle and start riding it, it's unconscious. I don't have to think about it. If I'm trying to master some new piece of technology, I have to think about it quite a lot. So a lot of it's to do with habit. Now, when we come to the very basis of the whole of all of this, then I'm not a physicalist in the sense that I think there's much more going on than just matter, and that matter involves organizing fields and memory. It's certainly not matter as usually conceived in mechanistic materialism. And I think also that these levels of wholeness have also awareness or experience to some degree, but most of the time they're functioning habitually and probably unconsciously, like we do most of the time with most of our actions. So then when we come to the larger framework of what is the basis of all of this, my ultimate position, I suppose, is panentheism. Panentheism, the doctrine that God is in nature and nature is in God, and that all things are sustained by the divine consciousness, that there's ultimately a consciousness underlying all things. But I don't call this idealism because idealism can come in various forms, but one of the forms would be a kind of ultimate consciousness, which is the basis of everything, without saying very much about its structure. I'm a Trinitarian. I think that the ultimate reality or consciousness has a Trinitarian structure. In other words, it has a ground of consciousness itself, a ground of conscious being, which in the Hindu model is Sat, as in Sat, Chit, Ananda. There's a ground of being, which is the basis of everything. Then Chit is about consciousness and the contents of consciousness, names and forms, which are within the consciousness. There has to be a knower in order to have what's known. So there's a differentiation between the knower and the known within ultimate consciousness. And then there has to be a dynamical principle, which in the Christian version of the Trinitarian model is the Holy Spirit, which is the ultimate source of energy, movement, change, actuality, which we find in nature. And so just to summarize how I see this ultimate consciousness reflected in nature, I think that the ground of conscious being supports all things and maintains the universe. If it ceased to exist, everything would vanish. It's God, in a sense, is the prime cause of all things, not in the sense of starting everything off in a big bang, like pushing a start button, having designed the laws and constants of nature, but rather sustaining the universe from moment to moment, underlying all being. And that the Logos principle in the Holy Trinity in the Christian model is the principle of forms, names and forms. And that gives rise to the shapes and structures, the morphic fields of nature, which give rise to shape, form, structure. And the energy in nature, which I think is derived from the Holy Spirit as its ultimate source, gives change, actuality, movement, and so on. So everything in nature, according to modern physics, is made up of energy, underlying energy within it, and it's organized into form by fields. So the fundamental principles of modern physics and its understanding of nature, energy and fields. Fields give form, energy gives movement, change, and actuality to things. And I think the source of that is a Trinitarian form of consciousness, which is not just consciousness in the sense of a knower and the known, but also a principle of energy, which is what underlies the changing realities of the world.